In this example, we're going to use 3ds Max's 2014 version to create three simple models, apply UV maps to each model, apply a texture, save the file as a max file, and also export the file as an FBX in order to use them in game engines. Let's get started. So let's go ahead. I'm going to zoom extents here to get everything back into view. I'm going to go to this first tab over here, my Create tab, where my standard primitives reside. I'm going to go ahead and select Box and create a simple box for my first model. Some artists will use other views to start the creation of their model. For the sake of this example, I'm going to start in the perspective view, and I'm going to click and drag my initial shape of my box. Let go of the mouse button, and then I'm going to move forward to finish the creation of my 3D box. Once I've created the shape, I can go back and adjust the parameters of my box by adjusting the length, width, and height over here to your right. Under parameters, I'm going to set them as 64 by 64 by 64 Unreal units. As you can see, for my example, I have already set my units to Unreal units, and that is represented by the UU that follows the numbers here. Once I've created my box, I'm going to go over to the Modify tab. I'm going to select Edit Poly, and while I don't need to do any manipulation of my model, I can do so in this mode. But instead, we're going to go ahead and use this simple box as our first example, and we're going to go ahead and apply a checkerboard UV shader to our box by selecting our material editor up here at the top from our top menu here. Well, not our top menu, our icon menu here that resides just below our pull down menus. Select material editor. We're going to go over here and select our diffuse button, which right now has nothing. There's nothing populating this box, which means that slot is empty. We're going to select that diffuse button, and we're going to select the checkered shader that is fourth in the list in our standard list here in our material map browser. I'm going to double click checker, and it is going to populate our first slot here in our material editor. Once it has been populated in that first slot, I can now drag this material over to our box and apply it to our box. Now, initially you will not see the checkerboard applied to the box, but what we can do now is we can go over to our list here inside the material editor of icons here, and we can actually select Show Shaded Material in Viewport, which will bring up our shader and display it on our box, and we will do an assignment of the material to the selection. Once we've done those two things, the shader is applied to the box, and the shader is then placed into a list for our UV editor in order to manipulate that shader in our UVW unwrapping section. So let's go ahead and close our material editor. We're going to go over here to our modifier list. By the way, make sure that you have nothing selected under your edit poly. And we're going to go over here to modify list. I'm going to hit the U button to select unwrap UVW. For your best practices, you should always use something simple for our simple primitives. In this case, once we've opened our UV editor, we can actually do a Control A to select all of it. Actually, I'm sorry, let me back up. We'll select Polygon, which can be selected from our list under our modifier list here, we can select Polygon, or from our Edit UVW editor, we can select Polygon over here to the bottom left, represented with a face or polygon icon. Once we have Polygon selected, I can do a Control A and select all of the faces. This will allow me to manipulate the unwrapping of the box. Some people like to use the peel mode. Some people like to use the projection mode to apply or unwrap our box. Depending on how you'd like to apply the texture to your object would be significant to which mode you prefer to use in order to apply or create a rendered texture for your a rendered material for your static mesh. So if we'd like to wrap, for example, just a standard color around our box, we could actually leave this as is and go ahead and render a texture for it. But if we want to select and apply different letters or different numbers, let's say we want to make this a die, for example, then we would need to unwrap these faces separately and then render our texture in order to apply the different looks to each side of the face of our box or cube. So let's go ahead and decide what we're going to do with this texture. Okay, so let's create a simple crate for our box here. So but alternatively, we could use our 3D option inside of Photoshop, if you have Photoshop, and paint, import your 3ds Max file as an OBJ and paint directly onto your model inside of Photoshop. I'll actually show another example of that in another video. For now, let's go ahead and apply a simple same-sided crate with wood texture. So we're going to keep our cube just as is, and we're going to render out a BMP that we'll actually use as a template to texture our model. Let's go ahead and find a crate texture to apply to our rendered BMP file. Okay, now that we found our texture, let's go ahead and render out our UVW box here. So let's go to Tools. We're going to go to Render UVW Template. Let's go ahead and we'll do a, just for the sake of the example, 2048, oops, 48 by 2048. We'll actually use our edges will be white. Let's go ahead and render that. And let's make our edges, let's make our edges white first. Say OK. Now that we have our edges lined in white, let's go ahead and render. And as you can see, it really doesn't do anything but show you a white box. You can see up here in the upper left corner here that there's a white edge. We're going to save this image out. Let's go ahead and save it to our designated folder. In this case, under Documents, 3ds Max, Scene Assets, Images, and we're going to create a folder, and it'll be called crates. And let's go ahead and name our BMP crate render. Oh, we'll call it, you know what, let's call it simple crate, sorry. And we'll save it as a BMP. Keep it at our 24-bit. Let's go ahead and close our render UV. Let's go ahead and bring over Photoshop. Let's go ahead and open our newly created rendered texture here. 3ds Max, scene assets, images, crates, simple crate. Let's open that up. As you can see, it didn't quite get the entire thing, but as you can see, you can still see the edges here. But what we're going to do is we're going to simply copy the face of the crate we'd like to have and paste it in our new texture, in our new file. By standard practice, we always like to unlock our background. I'm going to double click on the background and make it convert it to a layer 0. So in our layer 1, let's go ahead and do a Control T, and I'm actually going to go ahead and just snap this crate to the edges here. Hit enter. It's not the best looking crate in the world, but we can do some manipulation here to make it look a little better. There's some white edges here based on the texture that I retrieved, and we can always take, for example, this middle section here and create the rest of our edges of our crate, or we could always take the one over here to our right, which seems to be pretty even here. Let's go ahead and copy that, and then we're going to go ahead and paste it, and we're going to go ahead and put it on this edge, paste another, put it right here in the middle, right? And then what we'll do is we'll go back to our layer 1, and we're going to simply fill in this white line here by actually, and let me hide layer 2 and 3. And while I'm still in layer 1, I'm going to actually go to my marquee tool. I'm going to actually copy the edge of this piece of wood here. Let's copy that. And let's go ahead and paste it right up above it, and we'll just go ahead and lift that up a little bit. And what we could do is, as you can see, that's where our piece of wood is, but we have a little line there. I'm going to get rid of that line, so let's go ahead and take our eraser tool, and let's increase the size of our eraser tool. Actually, let's make it solid. Let's make it 32, for example. And I'm just going to click, hold down Shift, click to the edge there, and hopefully, now you can't see the edge at all, but we've covered that white section up there. Let's go ahead and do the same thing on this side, except I'm just going to grab a small portion of this side. Let's go back to layer 1, go back to the marquee tool, and what I'll do is I'll grab just a snippet right here. I'm going to do a copy. and I'm going to do a paste. Go back to our selection tool and we'll move this piece up. And as you can see, not too bad, but we want that hole to still be there. We could also fill in that hole, and actually we could actually let's get rid of that hole actually. So let's go ahead and do a Control T on that, and let's just bring it down to right there. Hit enter. That stretched a little bit. Let's not do that. So let's go ahead and we'll get rid of that board, and what we're going to do is go back to layer 1. Let's go ahead and we'll copy from about right here, from that edge down to about here. Copy that. I'm going to paste it. We're going to move it up. And then, as you can see, there's a line there. So we'll go ahead and see if we can, let's see if we can maybe, I'm thinking smudging it out a little bit, but that would, that might not make it look too good. So let's try to, let's see if we can manipulate this edge a little bit. Let's go ahead and go ahead and take our erase tool here, and we're going to, let's go ahead and take a softer edge, and let's see what we can do with that edge here. So let's go ahead and go along that line a little bit. As you can see, we've gotten rid of that hard edge a little bit. Not too bad. Not too bad, actually. You can still see it a little bit, but that's okay. Let's see if we can sort of try to work our way. Let's see if we can. I'm just going to sort of go around a little bit until it sort of gets a little more natural look to it. Let's see. I might have gone too far, but we could do something like, oops, nope, we didn't want to go to the edge. Maybe go through it a little bit like that. Oops, too far over the hole. Let's see if we can sort of go around that hole a little bit. And basically I'm just brushing around that hole a little bit to try to give it a natural look. Something like that. How about that? So now it's not too bad. So we've given a little bit of natural look to a board that we sort of manipulate a little bit so that the layer 1 doesn't look as hard and repetitive. So now we have this texture done. Let's bring back our edges here. And now that we've got, we might want to move our middle board over a little bit. Actually, let's see, how do we want? Not too bad. We'll leave it as such. Now, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll save this as a target. We already know that it's a 2048 by 2048. And we're going to say save. We don't need a 32-bit because there's no alpha channel in it. Let's go ahead and say OK. And now we can actually go back and apply this to our crate. So let's move Photoshop over here. Let's go ahead and close our Edit UVW, close our render map here. We can actually go to Unwrap UVW and we will actually collapse all, hold yes. We'll actually go back to our material editor let's go up to the parent, go to our diffuse, and actually we need to clear our diffuse out. We're going to go back to diffuse, go to bitmap, and we're going to go to we're going to navigate over to our 3ds Max folder, to our crates folder underneath images, scene assets, images, crates. Select our targa, say open, apply, show shaded material in viewport, assign material, and as you can see, we have our simple crate applied. Now, as you can see, there are certain things about this crate that does not match up. For example, the bottom and top don't match the sides, which we should have used sort of a framework that goes all the way around the crate itself. But for now, we'll leave it as such. We can always go back to this, come back to this, and retouch up our. We can always copy other boards and put them across the top, and do that. But for now, here is our simple crate created and done, and we can go ahead and close our material editor. We'll save this as our 3ds Max scenes models. We'll call this simple crate. And there's our first model created. Thanks for watching.